Monckton, who is behind the curtain?
Ah, the Wizard of Oz, well, that's a very difficult question. If you wanted me to name individual names, I could go back 25 years and name Sir Maurice Strong, a Canadian bureaucrat at the UN, who established the structure of the United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change as a political organisation and not a scientific one. And he said at the time, a quarter of a century ago, I want this to turn into a world government. Al Gore has been talking about wanting it to be a world government. Jacques Chirac of France has been saying the same. What have all these people got in common from these different countries and different ranks? What they have in common, what these people have in common, is that they are all members and senior members of the world's ruling class. And increasingly this is a global ruling class. It's one which says, well, we now rule together. We all share the ideas and visions of our own power being spread ever more widely in a united way. And this may sound like a noble vision, but it's actually a selfish one. It's the old aim of, whether it be the Freemasons or the communists, fascists, of world domination, to use the old phrase. And now they've realised that they can do this without firing a shot. They can frighten us via our media who do not realise the danger and will not understand it until it's far too late. But they can get the media to whip up the global warming scare, and indeed any other scare they want to run. The media will always print a scare rather than the truth. And they have therefore secretly but consistently built up the position until now, here in Copenhagen, they think that they can set up a world government that will, by the sheer strength and wealth and power that it will exercise, and by the fact that it is not chosen by the people, can't be held accountable by the people, and can't be removed, it will be a dictatorship which could so easily become a terrible tyranny.
Can you see any connection between the crisis, I would call it crisis here, because it is some kind of the extreme situation we are going into, with the economic situation, which is also at the head. It's absolutely two crises at the same time. It cannot coexist. It begs you to think, what's the connection? Is there a connection?
It's very difficult for those on the outside to see what such connections might be. And that is why, whenever I talk about, let us say, a conspiracy of the governing class against the government, I can quote people like Jacques Chirac, Al Gore, saying we want to turn this into a world government, of course, Maurice Strong. They're all on the record, and you can see what they're doing, and you can join up the dots. It's much more difficult to go behind the curtain and say, well, is there a link between the big financiers who fund so many of these politicians and the politicians themselves in an attempt to create a new world order, both financially and politically? I don't know. And I don't think speculation about such things is helpful. What I do think is we've got to be very careful that if any such thing has been thought up, we stop it, and stop it firmly, and stop it here, and stop it now.
How?
I'm going to do what anyone can do in a country that is still free, because we won't be free for very much longer if this goes through, this treaty. And I think what I'm going to do in the next 2 weeks is I'm going into the conference hall. I will be talking to the other delegations, the national delegations, one by one, very quietly. I will be saying, don't go there, don't do this treaty, don't set up a world government, don't worry about the climate, don't spend any more money on this, don't do away with democracy. Because in the end, what this is about is democracy. Democracy is now in mortal danger. And the extraordinary fact is that here, the news media, almost all of them, in the democratic countries, are not doing their duty of telling the people about this danger. Why is this? I think it's because they've ceased to be mirrors of the establishment. They have become poodles, and they now see themselves as part of the establishment, albeit a junior partner. But they see themselves as having a seat at the top table of this world government in the way that ordinary people won't have. They see themselves as part of the governing class and no longer as the champions, tribunes, and spokesmen for the government.
This is absolutely something I remember very well from the communist Poland, communist Soviet Union. This is a carbon copy.
I'm very interested in your observation that this is very like communism in Poland and the Soviet Union, because that is exactly what it is like. And indeed it's very like the same people who are driving it. I had a friend, Eric Langton, who was one of the founders of Greenpeace. And he said to me many years ago that he left Greenpeace not that long after founding it, because when the Berlin Wall came down, the international left had nowhere to go, but they chose the environmental movement as their target. They moved in, they took over Greenpeace, and they turned it not into an instrument of environmental improvement, but an instrument of political repression. And that tactic, which was very clever, and was invisible because we were so busy cheering about reform of the Berlin Wall at the time, we didn't see it happening. It happened quietly. I now am beginning to get evidence that China, for instance, has been funding environmental movements in the West precisely to get them to shut down the Western economies so that China will not have to compete with the West for natural resources. You may say, at first blush, why would China have a vested interest in doing down their trading partners in the West? Answer, because the real battles between nations in coming decades are going to be over scarce and precious supplies of natural resources, with a growing population worldwide and a gradually more wealthy population worldwide demanding what we've already got. I for one, would not deny it to them. But that the Chinese have a very clear idea of. They know what they're about, and it is in their interest, in the interest of Russia, India, Indonesia, Brazil, the big five poor countries, to slow down and even perhaps to stop economic growth of the West, so that they can grow themselves using the resources that we would otherwise have preempted. I understand that quite clearly, but I do think it's a worry for us that our democratic institutions, our media, our corporations are to some extent being bought or bullied or persuaded by lobbying groups funded by China, by Russia, and by other countries whose intentions towards us are not friendly and whose intentions towards our democracy are very definite.